You're a last of a dying breed. You're one of only 4 remaining players in the NHL who do not rock a visor. Do you know who the other 3 guys are?
I do. Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan Reeves, and Jamie Benn.
That is correct. So what is the preference of keeping the visor off? I mean, people are just curious. Like, obviously with today's game and how quickly pucks are being shot. What's the reason?
I don't know. It's just more of that's what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with.
Thick skull.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. That I would probably fall into that category.
Bolts Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Bolts Block Party, powered by our friends at Highlight IPA. I am your host, Wolfie, joined by my cohort, Braydon Coburn, and we are excited that we got this guy. He is like a 3-time veteran of the Bolts Block Party. This will be number 4, which puts him in the top category of guests that have ever been on the block.
Leader on the board.
Leader on the board. Zach Bogosian is back in the house. Zach, it's awesome to see you, man. How's life? How's everything been so far?
Life's good. It's good to see you guys. It's nice to be back. And it's nice to be on the top leaderboard for this show. So,
you're at the top now.
Yeah, but it's always great to come back.
You guys are still in shorts and T-shirts weather in Minnesota right now? You guys are kind of like good.
Yeah. It's the cold front hasn't quite made its way there yet, but
careful what you wish for.
I know, yeah, but we've been super lucky for the weather. I know it gets cold there. It stays cold, but for the last, I'd say the last few months, it's been great fall weather, so it's been fun.
Would you rather come to Florida then? Would you rather this road trip in July?
Yeah.
January.
Yeah, for sure. Try to escape the snow a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is a long one for us. I think it's 12 days.
Yeah, that's really long to start the season.
I was really curious because some guys feel differently about this, but I wanted your opinion on it because you're a veteran guy and you've been through a bunch of different seasons and starts. Does starting on the road and having a big road trip like this at the beginning of the year, does that bring the team together? Does that been helping? You guys are obviously having a ton of success. But personally, do you feel like it's an advantage to start on the road as a team as you're trying to gel?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like training camp's always kind of just crazy with how many people are there. You have 50 guys trying to make the roster, trying to make an impression, and then once you kind of cut down the numbers, you get down to your team and. It's tough to kind of bond, off the ice because you're so tired during training camp. So it's nice to get on the road, get some team dinners and get some guys hanging out and getting to know some guys. I know, we have a few new guys this year, so I think that's super important to kind of implement them into the group. And it feels long when you're on the road, but in turn it's going to be for the positive in the long run.
So you being the older guy now, right? You just brought that up, and you're the vet of the crew.
Yeah.
And then you've got the younger guys. I mean, are there any sort of traditions that you're trying to implement? Or are you trying to put your foot down and kind of saying this is the way we do things? I mean, again, I'm assuming the coaching staff also brought you in for a reason, right? And so you are a voice, a leader in the locker room. Has that affected the younger guys so far? Again, like Kobe said, it's the beginning of the season, but how has that transpired with you being the older guy now in the locker room?
It's been fun, but I will say, Minnesota, we have a good group there. The core guys have been there for quite a while and been, together and trying to build that culture. And then you add in new faces, maybe like myself or a few other guys that just try to, pick up the loose ends and try to bring what we bring every day. But our young guys are great. They play such big roles now on the team that you don't necessarily look at them as a young player just because of what their value is for the team on and off the ice. But yeah, being the veteran or the older guy, it's fun.
Super vet. That just means
that
doesn't take things too seriously.
Yeah, exactly. I like to keep it light.
Yeah, for sure.
I know Kobe knows that, but
yes,
just trying to, I think every locker room needs character. They need people that are, there's some people that are very serious. There's some people that like to joke around, keep it light. I definitely tend to be more on the keep it light side.
For sure.
And I like to turn the switch on every once in a while. But it's fun to kind of find your way within a locker room. And I've done it a few times in my career where I've walked into different locker rooms and you just try to be yourself and kind of bring what you bring to the table.
For sure. Speaking of that, I mean, you're a last of a dying breed. You're one of only 4 remaining players in the NHL who do not rock a visor. Do you know who the other 3 guys are?
I do. Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan Reeves, and Jamie Benn.
That is correct. So what is the preference of keeping the visor off? I mean, people are just curious. Like, obviously, with today's game and how quickly pucks are being shot. What's the reason?
I don't know. It's just more of it's what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with.
Thick skull.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. That I would probably fall into that category. But yeah, it's not something I've really put too much thought into, just because it's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
I know it's definitely grandfathered in now, and guys are a lot more guys are wearing visors. But I've just never really I never put too much thought into it though.
I still think it's interesting that you guys, when you get into fights, and I know Phil, I hear him on the broadcast all the time talk about, he's like, you guys get into fights, right? And you're literally bare knuckle hitting plastic. Like there's a risk involved in that as well, right? Especially if you have a visor, because if I'm trying to knock your helmet off to get to your skull, but like you're literally going after hard plastic with your knuckles. Like there has to be a risk involved in that as well. Like you have to be a little bit crazy.
Aim for the chin.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you want to get the helmet off and still like you're swinging at hard plastic and a potential to like mess up your hand.
I know, but usually, I don't know, I'm sure Kobe knows this too. Like once you're kind of in that mode, you don't really feel much or think about much. It's survival mode, and you don't really feel it too much.
It's amazing what happens when someone's punching you, your brain kind of turns off, and it's just like the only thought in your head is like, I need to punch you back.
Yes, exactly. It's like 2 Neanderthals just headbutting each other.
So, I mean, how are you, Bogo, still playing at such a high level? Obviously, we know the injuries that you've had over the years, hip, shoulder, everything. Like, how are you still able to maintain and play at such a high level, knowing what you've been through?
I think it comes down to like a mindset. I always went into all of those injuries or surgeries or whatnot with a kind of a challenge to myself to see what I could get back to, and long hours. What a lot of people don't realize is when you're injured, it's a lonely place to be.
Sure,
it really is, and you find out a lot about yourself. And throughout the years of my experiences, I've really found my true self in those like dark moments. And I've always just tried to go into it with kind of a head first mentality and try to battle through adversity. But it's definitely not fun to go through, but I'm very lucky that I have that experience of kind of being counted out or down and out, and then you kind of make your way back and prove to yourself and then prove other people wrong. Or if they don't believe in you anymore, or they think you can't skate anymore or whatever, just trying to get back to a level that you can get to. That is the most like gratifying or most fun that I've had kind of during all that stuff. So you look at it as a challenge, but it's also fun to come back and challenge yourself.
So it seems from the outside to me like your fit with the Wild has been very natural. And I kind of want to just like ask you about how that all came to be, because I know in the summertime you're training up there, you're very familiar with the guys even before you were on the team. So I was just curious how that whole thing came. Do you have a relationship with Bill Guerin? Was it some guys that went to bat for you and said, hey, we want to bring this guy in? Or how did that whole thing happen? And because they brought you on board, and then now you've signed an extension to stay there for 2 more years. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I knew quite a few guys before I played on the team. I'd skate with them randomly in the summer. As far as my relationship with Billy, obviously I played against Billy, and I've known Billy kind of at an arm's length for a number of years. Was never like close with him or anything like that, but we shared a mutual agent, and then just throughout the hockey world's so small. You bump into people here and there, and I knew there was some interest a few years ago when I signed my extension or my contract to come back here. to play the second time. And I was talking to Minnesota, and I had a great talk with Billy. I really liked what he was, kind of what his vision was for the Wild. But it just, it worked out where, I wanted to come back to Tampa at that time. So I knew there was interest. And then when it kind of, happened when I got traded there, it was a smooth transition. I moved back into my house. My kids all had their friends there. During COVID at a certain point, they had gone to school there. So they kind of slid back into what their normal would be. And it was, it's been a great fit, and it's been a good move. And I'm enjoying it.
So obviously, you were in the same draft class as Stammer and Drew Doughty, third overall pick, 2008. Do you feel, looking back now, especially the longevity of your career, do you feel like you have lived up to the expectations of a overall third pick?
Yeah, I think you can look at it a few different ways. You get drafted to, every organization's different, where they're at and their vision of trying to win or not win or whatnot. I've dealt with a lot of injuries like we talked about, but I guess in a short answer, I feel like I'm confident to say that there's probably a lot of people that would have given up at some point, going through all the surgeries and kind of having that expectation of being a high pick and having it weigh on you. But I'm glad I've stuck with it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm curious, that mindset, because we asked Stammer too when he came here, and we put all the pressure on him as that draft pick, that first draft pick, and the Scene Stamkos campaign. Did you feel that added pressure to you? I'm just curious because top draft pick, there's a lot of responsibility, I believe, that comes with that, but there's also a lot of expectation, so to speak. For sure. So, like, personally, if you feel like, you're still playing, it's 2024. You know what I mean? Right. So I would think that there's some pride there for sure.
It's like I was talking to someone the other day, and I was just like, I can't believe this is my 17th year.
Right.
It's gone by so fast. And I remember like it was yesterday, like me and Stammer and Doughty and Pietrangelo and Luke Shen, obviously, who we all know. Yeah. We were at the draft in Ottawa, and we were, 17, 18-year-old kids, and, we're all still playing and trying to pave our way and our legacy and kind of, continue our careers. It's been fun to see every one of those guys have success out of that draft class.
Bogo, you're in a unique position where you're seeing now, like, 19-year-olds come into the league. Mm-hmm. How are they different now than when you started?
Yeah, I think their skills, obviously, you see a lot of guys can shoot the puck better, stick handle better skaters. I just think it's
what about if you put a puck in the corner?
Yeah, that's where
bring the puck out.
Yeah, and that's where I think an older guy or a veteran probably has the upper hand at this time, right? I remember when I first came in the league, and you're coming from junior where you're one of the better players, and then you're going in a corner against an Alex Kovalev who's super smart, super skilled. Like, they have that upper hand on you with knowing the game, and they've played it much longer than you've probably even been alive. Right. So it's definitely it's fun to see the talent that's come into the league. I think it's great for the league. But you can't count the old guys out, though.
For sure.
Yeah.
What's your best Kobe story? I'm sure you've got a few. Got to be a good one sitting in that noggin.
Yeah. When I think of I think of after in the bubble when we won, we were just all naked in the shower with the cup.
Oh boy!
And, we were doing the slip and slide. That was just seeing Kobe, just a massive human being. Sliding. Yeah, it was awesome. We had
in the shower.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was so much fun
there.
Yeah, it was great.
That's some grown man business we did not know about.
Yeah. No cameras were in there.
Yeah, exactly. No. There's none that we know.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Not a lot of tan bodies either. We've been in Edmonton for too long.
I know. Yeah.
That was not an image I wanted to see. In my mind.
So Wolf, you brought up a good point, and we were both drafted to Atlanta,
Yeah.
and we were talking about it before the show. There's been rumblings, and I know Kevin Weeks has been one of the guys that's kind of been possibly a part of a new group that's in a push to bring in a team to Atlanta. What do you think of that? What do they got to do the next time around to make it work?
So obviously, I when that kind of came up in the news, I think that was kind of this summer.
Yep.
I mean, Atlanta will always have a special place in my heart. It's where I started my career. It's who drafted me. I felt like when we left Atlanta, I was kind of just getting a grasp of the city and trying to figure everything out, kind of different areas you want to hang out, meeting friends and people in the community. And then we left. So and I was also 18, 19, and 20. I would have loved to
gone to a bar.
Yeah. Or even just have maybe my kids live there now. It's a great city to raise a family. But I don't know as far as keeping the team there. I'm not a businessman in that sense, but
Sure.
I felt like maybe if the rink was somewhere else where it was a little easier access to get to, I think maybe they could build their fan base a little bit. But
Sure.
the thing is what people don't realize is there wasn't a lot of people that came to the games, but the ones that went loved hockey.
For sure.
It wasn't just I got tickets tonight to the Thrashers game. Do you want to go? It was the people that were there really loved the team. And, you felt that. And it was kind of my first experience of which it doesn't happen very often, obviously, but moving from, Atlanta to Winnipeg, it was my first experience of seeing, guys who had kids and houses there. All of a sudden, just in a week, they're well, I got to sell my house. I have to rip up and uproot my whole family. That was my first introduction to seeing guys who get kind of put on the spot, and me now having 4 kids, it hit home when, looking back on it. When you're wow, those guys, I was easy.
It's a total team trade.
Right,
Every single guy on the team has been traded to Winnipeg.
Everyone's, the whole team's going there, so everyone's looking for places to live. So you got there's so many moving parts in it that
Right.
looking back on it, it was a pretty crazy move. And that was my first introduction to, the NHL life of it doesn't really matter. You have to go
Right.
work's calling. This isn't a pond hockey game.
Right.
It's my living. So that was my first experience with that.
Were guys competitive in the Winnipeg real estate market? We're hey, I got that house, I put an offer in, and someone else is, because Winnipeg's not a big place, and there would have been a lot of, all of a sudden you're bringing 20 guys into town, guys with families and stuff like you mentioned. I was just curious if you heard any stories about that.
Not that I'm aware of, but I do now, looking back, there was 5 or 6 of us that rented in this, they were condos, apartments, but it was only 3 or 4 floors. So we basically had the whole place. So it was a pretty big frat house.
Yeah.
You always hanging with the guys. I think it was me, Tim Stapleton, Evander Kane, Burmistrov, and I think a few other guys lived there. We lived there. I lived there just for a year, but it was fun. Probably my living situation, I live with Joey Gilmay in his duplex in Atlanta, and then
Trainer,
he's a great
trainer,
amazing equipment guy, one of the salt of the earth human beings. Still have a relationship with him to this day. He's awesome, but I think that was good for me to I was 20 years old, so.
Sure.
I was living in the big city in Atlanta, and then all of a sudden I go to a smaller city in Winnipeg, and I had, kind of more younger guys living close to me, because in Atlanta everyone kind of was spread out. If you had a family, you lived out in Gwinnett or that area where the practice facility was, and if you were younger, you lived downtown. So it was kind of a 30 to 40 minute gap of kind of where guys lived. So Winnipeg was smaller. I could hang out with the guys more, and it was it was great.
So rewinding, I wanted to go back to the 2020 year, because now, again, we're 4 years removed from that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back now.
Just wanted to recount the
No,
shower.
don't want
Rewinding back to the shower.
Image I do not want ever in my head again. But now looking
Well,
back.
if you're invited to the next shower party we have.
I decline that invite. Looking back now, and the pieces of that puzzle that made it all work, again, in a bubble, just the times are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recall now about that team that had it to win it all? Like, I mean, obviously just crazy times, but looking at the nucleus of the team and the players and the pieces of the puzzle, what was it about that team that made us win it all?
I think a number of reasons. We were so close, and I think that bubble, for as much as it sucked, made us even closer. Like that was our family. Yep. Like there was that many guys in the bubble together. We were there to win, and everyone was at all costs like team first, making sure they were pulling their weight, pulling on the string or pulling on the rope. And I think it was a combination of us being so close and having such a deep like love for each other and being a really good hockey team, which a lot of times in pro sports that doesn't necessarily, it's either one or the other.
Correct.
And to have kind of both kind of mesh together and meet in the middle, I think that was essentially why we won.
Do you know, as the first NHL of Armenian descent, player of Armenian descent, who is the most famous Armenian athlete of all time? Just curious if he has history. Who would you say?
Pretty sure Andre Agassi.
Nailed it. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know who the second most would be besides yourself?
You
need a hint? I'll give you a hint. He's in the football world.
Do you play for France?
I don't know, not like soccer, football, like American football.
American football.
Coach and player.
Oh.
Come on, man. The Armenians are counting on you, Bogo. I'll give you a hint.
Is it start with an S?
Yes.
Sarkisian?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Steve Sarkisian will be the other one.
Sorry, I had a
It's okay.
brain fart there.
He was working. He's up early this morning. Yeah. I didn't even know that. Andre Agassi was Armenian until I looked up some history on Bogo. Did you know that, Kobe?
I don't even know where Armenia is.
Small country.
So you've got a lot of athleticism in the family, right? Mm-hmm. So your dad played football, uncle played football, wife is a soccer player. Is it a competitive household? Are you and your wife competitive with each other?
Not really with each other, but we did make 4 beautiful children that are very competitive with each other. So that makes for a lively household. Definitely, we are not the house that is quiet. We're the loud house.
Okay.
There are a bunch of.
Is it a free range house? Is it free range children?
They're just at that age. It's 8, 5, 4, and 2, and almost the 5-year-old's almost 6, the 4-year-old's almost 5. So we're coming up on birthdays here, but it's just it's almost like they wake up in the morning and it's like survival of the fittest. Like it's just a bunch of animals. 2 boys, 2 girls. I'm definitely on the boys more of being like gentle with their sisters, sure. But also trying to teach my girls like. Don't take any crap from anybody. Like you got to stick up for yourself. So they're definitely super competitive with each other. They're into all kinds of sports, which, me and Kobe were talking a little bit before this about, how crazy sports is, it takes up so much time.
For sure.
Which, my wife being an athlete, like she understands kind of the sports world, the process of it, and it's not just like one sport all in all the time. Like we were, there's soccer, baseball, hockey, lacrosse, gymnastics, all the things, just trying to get our kids into everything and trying to play different sports for different reasons, right? Sure. Like sometimes you're not going to be very good at a sport, but you can learn how to be a good teammate, be a good role player. Sometimes you're the best in your sport, and that's like your sport that you're going to excel at, and that's your confident one. But I think playing all different sports kind of helps it all. So it's a ton of fun.
So when you're not being a professional athlete and doing all the stuff that
I'm a glorified Uber driver.
You're an Uber driver.
Yes, yeah.
But what, like, are you a golfer? Because I did see you were caddying for Kyle Rudolph.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that was fun.
And he was a tight end for
Minnesota.
So tell me about that relationship. Or golf? Are you a caddy? Like, what's
definitely not a caddy. That was my first time caddying. So ironically enough, I met Kyle and Jordan, his wife, down here. He was playing for the Bucks.
Interesting.
And our kid, he's got 4 kids, and our kids are kind of all the ages all kind of line up together. So met them on Davis Island, got to hang out. But we share so many mutual friends back in Minnesota that we laugh all the time because we're like, how did we never like connect back in Minnesota? Because I had been living in Minnesota for a while, but obviously, him being in football, his July and August was, when I'm around, he was probably super busy. Right. So he was nice enough to ask me to go out to Lake Tahoe and caddy for him.
It's a big event, right? It's like
it's awesome.
A celebrity golf
tournament.
I think Killer played in it.
Killer played in it last year, not this past summer. But yeah, the hockey guys, I think it was like Pavelski, Oshie, John Carlson, and Matthew Kachuk.
Nice.
So that was my first time caddying. I've never played the course. Don't play much in altitude. So it took me a few days to figure out my yardages.
Right, I was going to say.
But
is he looking at you? Is he blaming you? Is he giving you he's giving you the stick guy or what?
I feel like the first few days I probably could have given him better advice. But on that, I think it was Sunday. They played on Sunday, yeah. I think the last round I was giving him better advice than I was. I wouldn't say good. Better advice than what I was the first few days. But
is he a stick? Like, is he a good golfer? Or?
He can play. He definitely can play. I think anytime you play in an event, like I would rather play a hockey game in front of like 500,000 people than like tee off in front of like 4 people. Like it's just not. Right. It's like it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
of course it is.
But to go back to your original question, like I do play a little bit of golf. I love to hunt. I love to fish. If I'm getting 5 hours to myself, I'm going in the woods and hunting. I'm not gonna. I'd rather hunt than golf.
Sure.
But I do enjoy golf. I know we played a ton of it when we were down here. It was it's a good time when you get all the guys together.
Who was in the group that you guys had? I know you guys probably had a couple different groups.
Yeah. Okay.
And then do you activate hockey Bogo? Is there some chirps going on every once in a while? I feel like that would be like your kind of secret weapon for Kyle is like kind of get under the other golfer's skin a little bit.
No, everyone there is super friendly because everyone wants everyone to do well. Sure. Obviously, I think who did we have in our groups? We had Catherine Tappan the first day. With Harrison Smith, who is safety for the Vikings. Yep. Second day, it was Mike Golick Sr. and who else? Oh, The Miz. He was awesome. Kind of to walk with him down the fairway and see how normal, he's one of the most hated men in wrestling at one point, right? Everyone loves to paint him as the bad guy, but super nice, very easy to talk to. And then like every once in a while, like we get into a big crowd and he would like flip the switch and, turn into the superstar. And it was like pretty cool to see. Like it's these guys, those guys are super talented.
For sure.
I don't have that in me, but he like,
there's a reason they probably like a lot of those guys get into acting. Like
he started on MTV's
the Real World.
Yeah, The Real World.
Yeah,
so he had cameras following him around at a young age. So
I think that he took, and just from like my very few conversations with him, I think he took it as a challenge. I think when he joined that world, the wrestling world, I think everyone was like, oh, it's just this reality star. Like, who's this guy?
Right.
But he's like built himself up and had so much success now that it's a pretty cool story because I think a lot of people didn't necessarily want to take him seriously or like give him that chance early on. And then I don't follow a ton of wrestling, but I know he just came out with a show and it's kind of his story of kind of where his life has gone and career up until now. So to caddy in a tournament like that, you meet some pretty cool people.
For sure.
You see the Kelsey brothers, you see Charles Barkley's there. A bunch of different people that, the sports world, it's like kind of like 1 degree of separation. Like, somebody who knows somebody, and then all of a sudden you're in a full blown conversation and it was a cool experience.
So we've seen like Kelsey and those guys get into wrestling.
Yeah.
What about Bogo? Would you get tapped? Would you do some body slams off the top rope?
What would my signature move be? I'm not very like acrobatic, so I wouldn't be able to do like the flips and stuff like that. I'd probably just like be able to like maybe pick someone up over my head and like slam
the beard suffocation. Get the I can't breathe.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on like Mr. Sacco and like Gold Dust and like Booker T, those guys.
Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, like Kane, The Undertaker. Yeah. I don't know what my signature move would be. It would not be as athletic as what those guys can do, though.
Okay, so I wanted to rewind just because we were talking about football players. You had mentioned on the last Block Party episode that you were a part of in the football relationship, and that your dad, I think, kind of wanted to steer you away from football because of the injury aspect. Mm-hmm. But then knowing how many injuries you've had in hockey, looking back now, would football have been more of a consideration than hockey if you knew you were going to get as injured over your career?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not like a crazy football fan, but I really enjoy watching it like live and seeing how like athletic and physical it is. So looking back on it, I would have loved to play, but I think that's like, if you talk to like, it's like every musician wants to be an athlete, every athlete wants to be a musician. It's like you kind of that like you never know type deal.
Sure.
It kind of has that lingering mystique. But if I could at least like try to play football. Like I've never played one down of football. So I would have just loved to see like what it was like.
What position would you have played?
Oh, I don't know. I'm probably not even big enough.
I was
which
gonna
is
say
like
linebacker. I think you could have been.
I don't
linebacker.
know. I'd be like I could probably like I'll be the place kicker. Like I'll hold the
holder.
The holder. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like a lot of my football friends, like I'm tiny compared to them.
Yeah.
Like they're huge. Like 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 250, 260.
Everything about them's big.
Yeah, and it's crazy because they're just like massive, proportionate human beings. There's no one that's like. They're not built like basketball players with like super tall.
Even the kickers now seem like they're pretty big dudes as well, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, we're almost out of time, dude.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to touch on this one thing, Bogo.
Go ahead.
When we were getting ready for this interview, I went back and I watched an interview you did, and you were talking about Toronto. You spent a little time in Toronto, and you were talking about Marner, and I was like, Bogo has this personality. He's always. You're always protecting your teammates, and you were standing up for Marner, and you had an opinion on your team. And I know we've talked in the past about your experience in Buffalo and some of the guys there. And one of the things I really admire about you, but I was, the team here in Tampa has changed so much. And I was just curious what you think of the changes, how fast they've happened since the Cups, and just kind of get your thoughts on this current team.
My thoughts, I think Stammer looks weird in that color.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to
it's a hard pill to swallow.
Right. Yeah. And like, to me, like everything that we did here, it was obviously Stammer learned from people, but like when I got here, it was Stammer was that like nucleus of kind of everything on and off the ice. I think that's, definitely with like Pointer, Cirelli, and like those guys, like that new wave kind of coming up and then stepping into the leadership roles. Like those are great guys to lead your team. It's definitely bringing Mac back, I think helps obviously a ton. And then Hetty, what him and Stammer built for 14 or whatever, 15 years together. That is unique in itself when you have like two superstars who the other wants the other one to do better.
Right.
Like, like they're so supportive of each other. So I think that having that kind of culture with the core group of guys that have been here, the Pointers, the Cirellis, and even, Hagel, Nick Paul, like guys like that, seeing that firsthand, I think is important for the organization to keep moving forward. And it's, you can't replicate one team though. Like you look at like our teams, like we had so many different characters. Like I feel like you need characters in a locker room. right? Like you can't just have a bunch of robots that go out there and it's like, okay, you're going to play a 1-1-3
Right.
and do this. You need guys that are kind of, you get your superstars, you get your guys who are just like your hard workers, your guys who, they're going to chirp guys, they're going to get in their face, you got your guys who are going to fight, you got guys who, if the game gets out of hand, like they're going to do something crazy. Like just having all those boxes checked is so important for a hockey team.
You got to find the right recipe. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously we did here, but you can't, in a salary cap era, you can't keep everyone together. Right. So it's always tough to try to keep, as much as I'm sure every winning team wants to keep everything together and keep the same team, it's just not realistic.
And with that, Bogo, we have a new segment here on the show. It is called the Hat Trick, powered by our friends at Highlight IPA. So here's how this works. These are 100 AI-generated questions. Like Cody and I really haven't even looked at these very much. Okay. So what we need you to do
hard hitting, by the way.
Choose 3 numbers that mean something to you between 1 and 100, whether that's your daughter's birthday, like whatever. Yeah. Just 3 random numbers, 1 through 100.
3 random numbers. 24.
Okay.
That's just standard for hockey.
Of course.
4.
Okay.
44.
Copy that. All right, so here we go. Question 24. What is your strategy for handling intense rivalries?
When
you know you got your...
I think it's super important to get into it physically.
Okay.
I think mentally, like, you can get there, but until you're in it physically, whether that's like getting hit or giving a hit early on in the game, I think you're just more mentally engaged. I think getting physically involved makes you mentally turn on your brain.
Short and sweet. I like it.
Now,
4.
You got a new coach this year, John Hines. And this is kind of a question, maybe put yourself in his shoes.
Okay. Love it.
What's the biggest challenge a coach has in coaching superstar players?
Yeah, I think any coach, I think the really good ones are good at managing personalities and like getting to know their players. I think there's certain, whether you're a superstar or not a superstar, I think you have to understand what makes that person tick, what kind of learn about them, kind of almost like their upbringing of, what they respond to and what they don't.
Sure.
So I think having good people skills is probably the most important thing, because at the end of the day, hockey's hockey. There's better hockey minds than other ones, but like, it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. I think that if you're a really good like manager of like personalities and understanding what buttons to push and what ones to kind of pull back from, I think those are the best ones.
Solid. And finally, who is the toughest opponent you have faced in your career?
Well, I thought when we lost to Colorado in the finals, that was a different, like, obviously, like, we were at, that was the 3rd final in a row.
It's tough, right?
So, and we were really beat up.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We were
Injuries.
tired and like injuries, right? We had a bunch of guys kind of just like battling stuff that, that would affect your everyday, like normal life, let alone
it's a chore just to take a nap.
Right, exactly. That was a different type of speed that I think that we hadn't seen in the years before. Not that other teams weren't as fast, but just, you got like McDavid and McCarr, or McKinnon and McCarr, and all these guys kind of just like snapping the puck around. Not only are they good skaters, but they move the puck really fast too. So it was just that was probably like, I remember sitting on the bench and might have been like game 1 or 2 and we were in Colorado and I was just like sitting on the bench and I was like kind of catching my breath and I was just like, yeah, these guys are good.
Yeah.
Like, and both teams are good, right? You're in the finals for a reason. Yeah. But I was like, that, like, looking back on it, as much as it stings and it sucks that you lost, you're like, I remember thinking like, man, these guys, like, they're good.
Yeah, I do also think you have to attribute that to that point of being in 3 straight finals. I think we had played like almost a normal regular season more of hockey than any other team at that point. So obviously that played a factor in that whole series.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of the whole run of the whole thing, I wasn't here for the second one, but even like the first one, like all the overtimes, all those long games, they're so drawn out. It's over a 7-game series. Like that takes a toll on you physically and mentally because you're so engaged. And always like I would like now during the regular season, I have a tough time falling asleep after games. I just like sit there and I'm just like wired from the game. Where like in the playoffs, like I fall asleep like right away. Right. Because it's like you're so you put so much into it. And that's not to say that I don't do that in the regular season, but it's just like your brain's turned up a notch, your body, you're trying to get to a certain level and you're just like, oh man, like this is
you feel an intensity in the crowd too, right? Exactly. You feel this energy. Yeah.
You can feel the wave, almost like a momentum wave of, and I know like when you're out on the ice, you don't necessarily notice it, but when you're sitting there, you can hear it, but you're dissecting the game, you're watching, everything happens out there so fast. But when you can almost feel your energy and your body like ramping and revving itself up, and all of a sudden you get on the ice and it's like go.
This is good stuff, man. I feel like we could talk to Bogo for hours, man. But we do have to cut it short. We know you got a game tomorrow, and
where are you bringing the boys tonight? Just to kind of finish.
Oh yeah,
you come back to Tampa. I'm sure the guys are looking at you like Bogo. We need some recommendations here.
I'll probably my family's going to be here, so my wife and the kids flew down. They wanted to see some old friends, and they're going to go to the game, so it'll be great to see them. But I'll probably I would direct them probably towards like Hyde Park area.
Yeah.
There's a few new spots I know that have opened up. I'm trying to think like, well, you know how much I barbecue.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
I should have just fired up the grill.
Yeah.
But
I
guess
put the automatic smoker on.
Yes, exactly.
set it up last week.
Yeah. I guess I'll probably
Burns.
Yeah.
Timpano.
Yeah, Burns is good.
Yeah.
Timpano, Onswan, Rowe. Like, there's so many.
There's so many now.
That's like what I try to explain to people is like, now that like Tampa's always going to be home for us, right? Like we love it down here, building a house, and this is where we'll be. But I try to explain to people, I'm like, it's such a cool city because it's like small enough where you can get anywhere.
Right.
There's a ton of good food.
Yes.
Ton of good bars, ton of good places to hang out outside. Obviously it's Florida, so it's beautiful weather, but like this is such a great city for the lifestyle of it. Not a lot of cities can, check that box.
Do you feel, and I know we're getting winded here, and I was talking to Kobe earlier about it, but you just said you're building a house here. Do you feel that a lot of the guys that were on the 2020 team, whether that's Patty Maroon, whether that's Killer like yourself, do you feel a lot of you guys are eventually going to retire and end up here in Tampa Bay? Because obviously, like you just said, the lifestyle, the weather, all of that, but the bond that you guys have all built together.
Yeah. And I do see a lot of us staying. When you live like as an athlete, when you live away from like your family, like your parents or your grandparents or whatever, like you tend to try to find those relationships in different cities that you play in that kind of makes you feel that comfort of like family. So that's obviously what we've found here with the guys, and everyone in the community has been great, but it just makes it fun when you have everyone that kind of lives around each other. I know, life gets in the way. Everyone's got kids, who knows in 5-10 years where that takes you. But in the immediate future, I think most of the guys' plan is to stick around, which could be, I think, really fun for the guys, but I think really fun for the city too. Yeah. Just like
and the team,
having the team together like that. It's certainly, it'll make for some fun retired years, but I'm not quite there yet.
Well, listen, Bogo, thank you so much again for taking the time. Again, you're now at the top of the list of the Bolts Block Party veterans. He's there right at the top, and we thank our friends at High Life for powering this whole bad boy, and we wish you luck. Not too much luck tomorrow, but we do wish you luck along the way, and we thank you guys for tuning in to another awesome episode of the Bolts Block Party.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.